It was supposed to be a simple girls' weekend. Just me, my best friend Emily, and a few other close friends from college. We had planned it for months, a reunion after nearly 3 years apart. Life had taken us in different directions after graduation, but we swore nothing would ever break our bond. So when Emily suggested a weekend getaway at a beachside hotel in California, I was the first to say yes. We arrived on a sunny Friday afternoon, our laughter echoing through the hotel lobby as we wheeled our bags to the elevator. The hotel was gorgeous, rustic wood, whitewashed interiors, and windows that opened to the view of the ocean. We had booked 3 rooms across 2 floors, and I was paired with Emily in a suite on the 3rd floor. We spent the day lounging by the pool, sipping cold drinks, and catching up on each other's lives. I hadn't realized how much I missed this, the ease of being around friends who had known me through every version of myself. Around sunset, we got ready for dinner at the restaurant on the ground floor. I wore a simple blue dress and let my hair fall in soft waves. When I walked into the dining area, I saw Emily wave at someone across the room. That's when I noticed him. Luke, Emily's younger brother. I hadn't seen him in years, not since we were all in high school. Back then, he was just a lanky teenager with a mischievous grin who used to hang around when we'd study at her house. But now, he had grown into someone entirely different. Tall, confident, with messy brown hair and sharp blue eyes. There was something about the way he looked at me that night, like he recognized me instantly, and wasn't at all surprised I had changed, too. He came over to our table after dinner, and Emily introduced him again, as though we hadn't already exchanged glances across the room. Apparently, he had just transferred to a college nearby and decided to crash for the weekend since he had nowhere else to go. Emily rolled her eyes as she explained that their mom told her to keep an eye on her little brother, and he'd promised to behave. Luke joined our group at the rooftop bar later, and I couldn't help but notice how easy he slipped into conversation. He was charming, funny, and way too self-assured for someone 4 years younger than me. Every time I looked up, he was already looking at me. It should have felt awkward, but strangely, it didn't. Around midnight, I decided to call it a night. The music was getting louder, and the air felt heavy with heat. I told Emily I was heading back to the room first, and took the elevator alone. I didn't bother locking the deadbolt once I got inside. I figured she wouldn't be far behind. I took off my shoes, washed off my makeup, and slipped into one of the hotel robes. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at the door. Thinking it was Emily, I got up without thinking and opened it. But it wasn't her. It was Luke. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me, really looked at me, and then stepped into the room, slowly closing the door behind him. My heart jumped. "Emily's still up at the bar," he said, his voice low and even. "She told me you left early. I figured I'd say goodnight." I stood there, stunned for a moment. My voice finally caught up with me. "You probably shouldn't be in here." "Probably not," he agreed, leaning against the door like he wasn't in a rush to leave. "But you didn't lock it." I crossed my arms, suddenly aware of how I looked. "That doesn't mean it's an invitation." He held up his hands like he meant no harm. "Relax. I just wanted to talk." I hesitated for a second, but then sighed and stepped back. Maybe I was overreacting. He was still Emily's brother. And it was just a conversation. He sat down in the armchair while I perched at the edge of the bed again, putting the remote between us like a barrier. "So," I said, trying to keep things casual, "what's new with you?" He smiled. "Other than unexpectedly crashing a girls' weekend?" We talked for a while, longer than I expected. He told me about college, his major, how he was figuring things out one class at a time. I told him about my job in marketing, the pressure of adulting, how I sometimes miss the simplicity of dorm life. It was easy. Too easy. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Did you ever think about me?" I blinked. "What?" "Back then, when you used to come over. Did you ever notice me?" His question caught me off guard. "You were just a kid." "Not really," he said. "You were just older. But I always noticed you." I didn't know what to say. My brain was racing, trying to stay grounded, trying to keep things appropriate. I laughed nervously. "Well, that's sweet, but..." But I'm still Emily's little brother, I know, he said, finishing my sentence. Exactly, I said, standing up. Which is why you probably shouldn't be here. He stood, too. You're right. I walked toward the door, intending to open it for him. But as I reached out, I felt his hand gently touch my wrist. I turned to look at him, and in that moment, it was like the air between us changed. He wasn't saying anything, but his eyes said enough. There was something real there. A tension I didn't want to admit had been building all night. But I pulled my hand away and whispered, "This isn't right." He nodded slowly, as if he'd been expecting that answer. Okay. And just like that, he left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood there for a long time, staring at the handle, breathing like I had just run a marathon. My thoughts were a whirlwind. I didn't know how to feel. Flattered?
Confused? Guilty?
I didn't tell Emily. I couldn't. What would I even say? The next morning, at breakfast, Luke was already at the table with the group when I arrived. He glanced up at me, gave a small smile, and then looked away like nothing had happened. And maybe nothing really had. But I felt different. Like I'd opened a door that should have stayed closed. That evening, our group decided to take one last walk on the beach before checking out. Emily stayed behind to finish packing, so it was me, Luke, and two others. As we walked along the shoreline, Luke slowed down until it was just the two of us at the back of the group. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, his eyes on the water. "I shouldn't have come into your room." I nodded. "It's okay. I just didn't expect it. I just needed to know if the way I've felt all these years wasn't just in my head." I looked at him. "Luke, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted. "I get it. Timing, age, everything, it's off. But I meant what I said." For a brief moment, I considered what it would be like if things were different. If he wasn't Emily's brother. If we had met at a party in college or bumped into each other in a coffee shop as strangers. Would I have seen him the same way? But reality always wins. We said our goodbyes the next morning. Emily joked about how she hoped Luke hadn't annoyed us too much. I smiled and said, "Not at all." On the flight home, I stared out the window, my mind still circling that night and all the questions it left behind. Maybe nothing really happened, but in another way everything had. A door had been opened, and even though it had been closed again, something had changed between us. Sometimes, the most unforgettable stories are the ones where nothing happens. And yet, somehow, everything does.